Just Energy with naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theories that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swing of a pendulum to the waves in the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. In the same way, things such as rocks and minerals vibrate very slowly and at speeds that are imperceptible to us. Living things such as plants, animals, and man vibrate faster and appear to be alive. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is if we take everything in our own universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita as she explores questions such as, what are we made of? Why do we get sick? How can I live a more balanced and whole life? Call in and talk to her and her thought-provoking guests. Send us your questions and get the help you need to move beyond any obstacle or challenges that may be affecting your life, right from the source. So stay tuned and explore your possibilities.
Well, if I unmuted my own mic and did my whole introduction unmuted, it would sound a whole lot better. Tom, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Well, I just was like going on and on and on and on and on, talking about my book, talking about this, talking about that, blah, 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 blah. And, it was one of those good days, and I just sounded like I knew what I was talking about, and I was muted.
Yeah, it was dead silence on my end, Dr. Rita, so
I
thought, the line went dead somewhere.
No, it was just my brain was dead. I have a new book coming out, which was one of the things I was mentioning kind of during the intro part, called Dark Angels, an Insider's Guide to Ghosts, Spirits, and Attached Entities. And since I've done this show, whenever I have had people come on that talk about ghosts, people that talk about attached entities, I had someone come on and we were talking about relationships, but the next day I was going to a conference to talk about ghosts. Everything blows up, and I'm sitting there going, oh, my God, I lost him, and then I'm put you on, you're not hearing me, and it's like, oh my mic is muted. Anyway,
that would do it.
Let me reintroduce you, since I guess they didn't hear that part either. So today we're going to be speaking with Tom Carey in the first hour about his book, Witness to Roswell. And so Tom began investigating aspects of the Roswell incident in 1991 for the Roswell investigative team of Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt. He has authored or co-authored more than 30 articles about the Roswell events of 1947 and has contributed to a number of books on the subject as well. He has appeared as a guest on many radio and television shows, including Coast to Coast, Fox and Friends, and Larry King Live. So please welcome to Just Energy Radio, Tom Carey. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Dr. Rita. How are you?
Embarrassed.
Nice to be with you.
I feel like I need one of those little emoticons, the little smiley face that you could just see.
Oh, yeah. I could use one of those myself.
So your book is, obviously about Roswell, and there have been, a lot of books about Roswell. Dr.
Rita,
how does that keep happening? Is there new evidence that keeps coming up and out about the whole incident?
Well, the people have asked me, why do you keep investigating a 62-year-old case? And for me, the answer is easy, because I'm interested in it. It's my favorite case, favorite UFO case. It's the only one I'm working on. Mm-hmm. And they said, oh, boy, why don't you just try something else? Roswell's old hat, Well, the thing is, if that were the case, our book wouldn't have been the top #1 UFO book seller in the world for the last 2 years. People are interested in it. I'm interested in it, so it seems to be a perfect match. And to answer your question, yes, we are finding new information. We are going to be on this case, Dr. Rita, for as long as it takes for either Don Schmidt and myself to solve it beyond irrefutable evidence, to where it's 100% solved. We think we're about 90% there now, but the only thing we're missing is a piece of physical evidence, and we're working on that. So if that happens, then we'll go on to another case. Or if the government comes clean and says, yes, we've been lying for 62 years, or however many years it will be when they come clean, then we'll be off the case because they've come clean. Or if all of the witnesses finally reach the hereafter and there are no more witnesses to interview, or if Don Schmidt and I reach the hereafter, we obviously will be off the case. So those are the criteria.
But you might have better luck, in the ethereal world getting answers.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. They up there, they really know what happened, and without a doubt. So those are the 4 scenarios that we will leave the case. In the meantime, we are still on the case. I talked to Don Schmidt this morning, actually, and we got a whole bunch of new witnesses that we're going to be following up on. And we have a number of leads for physical evidence. And at the end of before the year is over, we hope to have an exciting announcement, which I'm not going to reveal today, but we hope to have an exciting announcement. We'll post it on our website when it happens. I may as well give my website now, huh?
Sure, go ahead.
It's www.roswellinvestigator, all one word, .com. That's www.roswellinvestigator.com. And it has, we're constantly building our site. Our former site crashed. Everybody is familiar with that. And we have a new webmaster, and we're putting new stuff up there, and that's where all the new information will be posted.
Cool. You were just talking about physical evidence, because I want to address that first, because there's something that has always kind of bothered me. So when the craft crashed, how is it possible that they could send a bunch of military guys out there and totally bust that entire area and not leave something, not leave a nut, not leave a screw, not leave a little piece of something that got buried into the ground? It just doesn't seem.
Well, they did leave stuff, Dr. Rita. They did leave stuff. The rancher Mac Brazel, his son found stuff over the course of the next 2 years, from 1940, 48, and 49. He would go out riding after a rainstorm, and he'd always find something. And in 1949, he happened to mention at the Corona Bar one night that he had a cigar box full of that pieces of that contraption, as he called it, that crashed, the UFO. And we're talking now about this memory metal. The memory metal, remember, is this this metal that you can wad up in your hand and hold it over a table and let go, and before it hits the table, it's flattened right out without a crease, and you can't cut it or scratch it or do anything to it. So he had a cigar box full of that stuff. Well, don't you know, the next day, the Air Force pays a visit to his ranch. He, and they said, we understand you have a cigar box full of material, is what they call it. And he says, yep. He says, well, we'd like to have that cigar box. And the way Bill Brazel told it, he's dead now, but the way he told it to us was that the Air Force guys, when they said we'd like to have that cigar box, it wasn't a question, it was a demand, and that they were going to get that cigar box. So to answer your question, yes, they did not get everything, and we had hoped that some of the stuff is still out there, which undoubtedly it is, because the area is windswept, and these pieces of debris were light as a feather. So there's no doubt that they were blown miles. But today it would be like finding a needle in a haystack, without a doubt. It would have to be a fortuitous find. Well, perhaps a mile or two or three or four or five away from the actual crash site where the wind had blown something like that. And this is a desolate area, habitat to sheep mostly, and
cows.
And they're not going to talk.
No, I have family out there, so lots of cows. 30 miles down a dirt road to their house. It's like, how fun.
Right. They didn't get electricity or telephones out there until 1986, as I understand it. So it's pretty far away.
Mhm. And I think if they found something today that was 2 or 3 miles away, the chain of evidence, linking it back to that site would also be, quote unquote, contaminated in a lot of people's mind, that they would say, well, how do you really know?
Here's the thing, Dr. Rita. What we are looking for is a piece of the memory metal. That's our holy grail, because it had properties that no metal that we know of had back in 1947. There's some metals today that, and I can get into that if you wanted a little bit about re-engineering the memory metal, but back in 47 there was nothing like it, and you wouldn't have to send that away to be tested. You could see right away that it possesses properties that are literally out of this world. So, yeah, we hope that somebody comes in one day and says, "I found this out in the desert. What do you think this is?" But our better hope is that someone pocketed some of this stuff during the cleanup. A military person might have pocketed some of this stuff, and whether he is alive today or their children, the hope is that one of those military fellas or children of military that have kept the piece of the debris will come forward. As a matter of fact, our biggest lead of the moment is somebody like that. We know for a fact that his father was at the base, because his picture's in the base yearbook, and the son claims to have not only pieces of this memory metal, but also some pieces of the sand where, according to Bill Rickett, who was an NCO, a non-commissioned officer back in 1947, he and Dr. Lincoln La Paz had spent the month of September 1947 traversing the state of New Mexico, trying to determine from ranchers who might have seen the thing crash its speed and trajectory. Well, in this process, they came across an area about 5 miles north of the crash site where the sand had crystallized, as if it had been subjected to a high degree of heat. And it was Dr. La Paz's feeling that whatever this craft was had set down for some time, minutes or seconds, and the heat from it had turned the desert floor to glass. Well, this son of the airman that I was telling you about, who was on the base in 47, he claims to have some of that stuff, in addition to a piece of memory metal. He also claims to have photos that his father took. His father was an amateur astronomer, right? Amateur photographer. He may have been a astronomer too, but He was a amateur photographer who they often used to take pictures back then, and his son claims that his father took pictures of everything. Now, our frustration has been that we have not been able to hook up with this fellow, the son, who lives in a western state, and this does not bode well for this particular lead. As you know, when someone promises you something and he never delivers, you just, it's just always just out of reach. Not good. It's a big red flag, and
it just makes them be suspect.
Yes, yes. But the thing is, if the stakes weren't so high in this, if what he's saying is true, this would be it. I mean, this would be the biggest development in the history of this case. We would have photos, we would have physical evidence, and if it wasn't for that, we'd walk away from this gentleman now, because the red flags are all out there waving at us, because we just can't seem to get our hands on it.
This guy, so if he's out there making claims, wouldn't the men in black want to go and get whatever he has too? And if they think that he really doesn't have anything, then they're just going to leave him alone because he's just blowing smoke?
Well, no one knows about this except myself, Don Schmidt, and the gentleman, and one or two others.
Secret.
So I mean, we're talking about it today, which is on public airways. But up until this point, no one has known about it except us, so that we know of. So I right now I'm just flummoxed. You know what I mean? Because we've tried everything to get this fellow to cough it up. Because he contacted us. We didn't contact him, and he contacted us, Dr. Rita, 10 years ago on this. And at that time, he didn't tell me exactly what he had, but he made hints that he had something spectacular. And at that point, he ceased communicating with us. This is 10 years ago. With the statement, that he was going to write a book with his uncle about this. Well, of course, when they say that, the book never develops. I mean, you've heard that before. I'm going to write a book. Oh, right. And so we put it on the back burner and said, well, I guess nothing's ever going to come of that. Well, the fellow contacts us again, and here he is. Only this time, he tells us what he has, and if it wasn't for that, him stating what he had, that his father had pocketed now, and his father was involved in the cleanup. We know that for sure because other witnesses had told us about him years ago, and so all of that is legit. The father is legit. He died years ago. His father drowned in the 60s. And so the son didn't know anything about this other than his father had been in the Air Force. Well, about 5 years ago, the gentleman's mother was on her deathbed when she told him about his father and the stuff that he had stored in the basement, in a foot locker in the basement. And you've heard that before, right? Everybody has a foot locker in the basement. And that's when he called us, and it's been very, very difficult. And as you said, these are all these are red warning flags that this is not going to yield what he claims. That's where we are at the moment. But because
that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for the possibility, we would walk away from it. But what he's described is so stupendous, we have to see it through to its end. You know what I mean? With good investigators, you have to follow it to the end.
So one of the other comments that you made was something about reverse engineering. So based on what you believe or, people believe was in the craft, are there signs of, other than the Velcro thing, signs of materials and technology today that you believe are indicative of materials that were found in the crash that they have reverse engineered and brought to the market?
Well, Dr. Rita, I never put too much stock in that, but the answer to your question is absolutely. About a year ago, I started seeing some postings on the internet from this fellow that lives in Florida. His name is Anthony Bragalia. And he started talking about things that led me to believe that, boy, this fellow is really doing a job on this case. He's a good investigator. He makes the calls. He does the work. And his specialty, that's why you need more than one person on this case. And it's why we've been on the case for over 20 years, because there's a new development every month, let's say. Well, Tony Bragalia, he told me, he said, what I wanted to do was to find out what happened to the Roswell wreckage that was taken to Wright Field, which is today known as Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He says, I wanted to find out what happened to it. And this is a very complicated story, and quite frankly, when I read it, I got a headache. And so I'm not a metallurgist or a chemist, and a lot of this technical stuff that was in the reports that he sent to me just really gave me a headache. But to cut to the chase, what Tony found was he found a few articles, scientific articles in scientific journals. These are refereed scientific journals about this alloy that they were trying to develop, an alloy of nickel and titanium, which today is the trade name nitinol, Nitinol. Well, nitinol, it turns out, has the properties of the memory metal, so that is famous from the Roswell crash. So Tony followed it back. The scientific papers referenced a second progress report from Battelle Institute in Columbus, Ohio, to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base under a Air Force contract number. And this looked very suspicious. And the date.
No kidding.
The date on this second progress report was 1949. So it presumes the first progress report, which you would guess would be 1948. And of course, the Roswell wreckage was brought to Wright Field in 1947. So you figure it took the Air Force a year to get their act together. And they have their own scientific labs at the Air Materiel Command at Wright Field, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and they probably were able to determine, and we know this from General Arthur Exon, who told us so, that they were able to determine that the Roswell wreckage was primarily an alloy of two elements, titanium and one other element which he couldn't remember. Well, the Air Force, what they did, Battelle has done a lot of work for the Air Force and the military. It's a think tank. It's a metallurgical institute. And so they farmed out some of this memory metal to Battelle to try to back engineer it. Well, when Tony found this out, and it's in the scientific literature referencing the second progress report, Tony, of course, fired off a Freedom of Information request to obtain the second progress report. He sent one to Battelle, and he sent one to Wright-Patterson. And lo and behold, they couldn't find it. They said, we see it here in our index. It's in our history here, but we can't find it. Well, Tony's not one to give up. And so he fired off another Freedom of Information request to a government agency. I don't know which one. It's in the Defense Department somewhere. Lo and behold, they had it. And Tony got a copy of this report about 2 months ago. And the author of it was a fellow who way back started this whole chain of events for Tony. He told a friend of Tony's that he worked for Battelle, and this wreckage came from right field and had these strange properties that we know of memory metal, and that the fellow worked on this in 1960. And that was all he would say. Well, lo and behold, this guy is the author of the report. He's dead now, but it turns out that we've come full circle on this.
Wow.
So things are falling right into line. That the Air Force, they farmed out this material to Battelle, who had the wherewithal to conduct the studies on the titanium and nickel, and they left it to the Navy. They farmed it over to the Navy to actually announce the discovery of nitinol in 1963. Well, lo and behold, Don Schmidt and I, we did Coast to Coast AM about 6 months ago, and we happened to mention this nitinol thing. And the next day I get an email from a fellow who worked in one of the Battelle labs, and he worked on this very stuff.
Cool.
And,
hey, we need to take a quick break. Let's come back to this topic after the break.
Okay.
I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're talking to Tom Carey about his book, Witness to Roswell. His website is roswellinvestigator.com, and we will be back after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
Are you sensitive to energy? Want to explore the world beyond the five senses? Looking for a new career as an alternative healthcare practitioner? Then the Institute of Applied Energetics, Medical Intuition, and Energy Medicine training programs may be right for you. Our comprehensive curriculum provides students with a deep understanding of how to detect, evaluate, and transform the subtle body, as well as techniques for correcting energetic imbalances that may underscore a person's ability to experience radiant health. So if you are sensitive to energy, contact the Institute of Applied Energetics right away. Be a catalyst for changing the way healthcare is done around the world. Visit www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and start your new career today. How would you like to live long and enjoy great health? How about creating solid bones and whiter teeth, strengthen your heart and eyes, and have radiant, youthful-looking skin? There is an ancient health and longevity secret that has been used for millennia in Egypt, India, and China that can help you achieve this. For the first time in the modern world, Pearlsium brings ancient wellness secrets to you. For more information about Pearlsium, visit www.ancientpearl.com. Before we get back to the show, I want to thank all of you for tuning in to Just Energy Radio this evening. Many of the people I've helped over the years were listeners just like you. If you're at a junction in your life, don't stand alone at this important time. Call me or send me an email. We can set up a private consultation so that you too can experience wholeness in your life. To find out more about the services I offer, visit soulhealer.com.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio, and whoo-hoo, I unmuted my mic today. We're here talking to Tom Carey about his book, Witness to Roswell. Tom, we're starting to get a bunch of questions in the chat room, so let's kind of move away from the material part, even though I have kind of a follow-up question about that. One of the things that I noticed in your book was that a lot of the people that you interviewed were, this probably sounds totally politically incorrect, but were like low-level people, guards and attendants and assistants who were there and participated or witnessed what was going on, where a lot of other people have really just tried to get the big people to talk, the big players. And it seems like you have really looked at it in a different way of, well, who else was there? And I find that the accounts are amazing and remarkably consistent in a lot of the interviews you've done.
Here's the thing, Dr. Rita, and if you interview enough people, or if you do anything in numbers, a pattern, you can see what patterns are developing. And in this case, the bigger people, as you call them, are your officers and higher-rated non-commissioned officers. Well, it's the greater chance that they're older, say, and they're all gone now, because to become say a master sergeant, you have to be in a number of years. So the older, the higher the rank, the older the person is normally, and those people are unfortunately dead now. So when I sit down at my desk to do phone people, I look for the youngest people in the yearbook, the book privates, the private first class, because there's a greater chance that they're still alive than the higher ranks. And so that's how that breaks out. Sure, we would like to get generals, and we have gotten some, majors and colonels. Also, the lower the rank, the more likely it is that they will talk. And the reason is that the higher the rank means they're probably career military living on a pension if they're still alive. And our experience has been that when we get someone like that, usually they won't talk because they think they'll upset their pension. So
but there's also a lot more privates than there are generals, and so the number of people that, that pool is a lot bigger.
Absolutely.
That was always something that, even, this is kind of the follow-up piece, even with the stuff that's going on at Wright-Patterson with that material, it's like there have to be a lot of personnel that interact either with the research or supporting the research that, it's a secret, but, people talk inside the company.
Well, there have been some secretaries that have talked. Now, these were catalogers. They're not high executives. They're secretaries. There have been a few secretaries who are familiar with this stuff that have talked. And you're right. The pool is bigger as you go down in rank, and there's more privates and corporals than there are NCOs and officers. And I will say one other factor is that officers, by and large, will not talk. I guess it's something about their rank.
It's a pride thing.
It's a pride thing. The likelihood that officers will talk is very low, and the likelihood that career officers and career NCOs will talk is pretty low as well. So that's why so many of the witnesses are former privates and staff sergeants. That's the lowest ranking sergeant. So that's how that breaks out. But our attitude is we'll take anybody who will talk. But it's just the way the numbers have broken out.
But I just find that it's interesting that, okay, this guy has this little piece. You know, he wheeled the cart over here, and then this guy over here said, well, I put it on the airplane, and then this guy over here said, well, I took it off the airplane, and they're totally unrelated people doing very mundane tasks.
Yep.
But when you start connecting locations and timelines, it creates a whole picture.
That's what our job, Don Schmidt and myself, that's our job, is to put the pieces of the puzzle together. We would be very, very suspicious of someone who knew a lot about the whole story. And as a matter of fact, most of the people, as you say, know a little snippet. They only know that little piece that they were involved in. And that's what rings true to us. Someone who said, well, there was a fellow named Frank Kaufman who was one of those fellows that he claimed to be a insider spook, so to say, you know, that was stationed there at Roswell to look at things. And he claimed to know everything about the case from being an insider. Well, finally he imploded as a witness because we found him fabricating documents and saying things that just couldn't be true. And he finally, in the end, on his deathbed, he did admit it to us that he was not being truthful. And we said, well, why did you do this? And he says, well, it got out of hand because before he knew it, he had TV cameras coming to film, the case, and he was on TV a number of times, and he said it just got out of hand. But we were on to him, though, for the last few years of his life, and we finally said, Frank, we just don't believe you, and what's your game? And he said, the game is that they're trying to run the clock out. We do believe he was connected, so we don't know if he was just on his own making everything up, or he was some sort of still insider trying to steer people in the wrong direction. We don't know, but at least we found him out.
So here's a question that came from the chat room, and it was actually one of my questions. There has been a lot of controversy about the multiple crash sites, and then the aliens, no aliens, one has aliens, the other one doesn't have aliens. What has your research revealed about that whole topic?
Well, I'm glad someone asked that because we can set them straight. In our book, Witness to Roswell, there's a map in appendix, I forget which appendix it is, but it details the 3 crash sites that we believe were involved in the Roswell incident. We talked about the debris field, Mac Brazel, the sheep pasture, where this thing exploded one evening. We believe it either had an internal malfunction or it was struck by lightning, something like that. It blew the ship apart, except for the inner cabin or an escape capsule of some sort. But the ship just was torn apart, and it rained all this debris down on Mac Brazel's sheep pasture. Well,
so that wasn't actually a crash.
Oh, no.
It was stuff flying from the sky.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people have this image that it
crashed. Dr. Rita, I guess it's because we use the term so often. They speak about the crashed UFO, the Roswell crash. It didn't crash like an airplane crashes, by flying into the ground. It exploded in the air is what happened. And it rained down all this debris except for this inner cabin or capsule that continued on for another 30 miles. And that crashed into the ground much closer to Roswell. And so there you have 2 sites. The first one, the debris field. The second site that I just told you about, where the remains of the ship, the inner cabin, which contained some bodies and one that was alive, crashed into the ground. We call that the impact site. That's the impact site. Now, 2 miles east of the debris field, what we think happened is that in the explosion, there were 2 or 3 aliens that were not inside the inner cabin, and they got blown out with when the ship exploded, and they came to they landed on the Earth and met their death 2 miles east of the debris field. So we call that the D. Proctor site, because that's the fellow who pointed that site out to us, and he was with Mac Brazel that morning. So those are the 3 sites.
All right, now this might sound like a very basic question, but I have never seen this information anywhere. And, reading your book, I'm going, well, what's with that? So, okay, so there were 3 or 4 aliens that were found in the impact site, and then there are the other ones that were in the secondary site.
The Proctor site, yeah.
Yeah, that one. So how big was this ship?
Well, we don't. Well, the Air Force certainly didn't tell us, but from what we know, that the capsule, we know what size that was. The inner cabin, the capsule, was an egg-shaped affair. That was about 12 feet long by about 6 feet high at its highest point. Okay, it's shaped like an egg. So that's about 12 by 6. How big the ship was, and we think it was a disc. Frank Kaufman set everybody astray 10 years ago when he claimed it was some sort of bat-wing thing. They even made a plastic model out of it, but we believe it was a disc. And at that point, they were reporting discs about 30 feet in diameter, is what the people were reporting. But we don't really know, because it was so torn apart. And certainly somebody knows, but they haven't told us.
Well, and I was just curious because, the story is they put it on a flatbed truck, and I'm going, how did they get all of these people into something that they could load on a flatbed truck and be comfortable? Because I know what it's like riding in a sports car. You can have 2 people and some amputees in the back seat.
No, it was
the aliens are small, but...
No, it was just the egg-shaped. The only thing that was on the flatbed truck was the egg-shaped capsule, or pod, or inner cabin, as we call it. That was the only thing on the low boy. The cadavers, or the aliens that were dead, were taken in an ambulance. The military had box type ambulances in those days. They probably still have them. They're just like troop carriers, except they have a red cross on them. And they took those. They were carried away in that. The one that was alive, we don't know how that was transported. The one that was alive ultimately wound up at Wright Field, but we don't know which flight it went on, or if it went on a special flight. We just don't know. But the ones that were dead, we do know which flights they went out on. They went out on 2 flights, on July 8 and July 9, 1947. And one was a B-29 and one was a C-54 cargo plane. So there were 2 body flights, as we call them, and the one that was alive, we have a story in our book about someone cited the one that was alive. One story we have is that it got loose. They were keeping it in the guest house. And the guest house is still there. It's right on the edge of the base, near where the main gate used to be. And somebody reported that it got loose and terrified the residents of a trailer park that was right near the base. And you have this alien loose scaring everybody. And in the process, it got scared and tried to get back onto the base, and tried to get in through the front gate. And the startled MP shot it. So that's the latest story we have on it. We're not really sure, but that's I can imagine.
It sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good. I just picture these people in a trailer park with a little 3.5 foot tall being looking in their window.
But see, those are the people you need to find so you can interview. Could you imagine?
Right.
Like, oh yeah, I remember that night. Yeah, there was this little kid in a Halloween costume.
Yeah, he was running around. Yeah, it took off, and but that's one story we heard. Another story we heard is that it wound up at right field, and they kept it alive until 1952 somehow when it died. So, but we're still we're still on it.
You're still working on it.
Yeah.
One of the other questions that I had, I mean, it's like the soul, and I have like such bad phonics skills. Soul, anema, whoever, the soul girl guy in the chat room asked these two questions, and I had the exact same questions on my little list.
All right.
You know, but how did the government manage to get people to be quiet for so long? I mean, you're getting deathbed confessions right now, but what did they do to keep rumor mill from happening?
Well, this is one of the reasons why the Air Force will never come clean on this, Dr. Rita, is that they have too much to answer for. Back in 1947, the military had just won World War II, so they were at the peak of their image, their how the citizens felt about our military was right after World War II. We just thought they were the greatest, you know, having defeated Germany and Japan. So, but in this particular case, it was so out of the ordinary and so sudden. They just, you know, they didn't know what to do, and when they don't know what to do, they cover it up. So they early on decided to cover this up until they got their act together, and apparently they still don't have their act together because it's still covered up. But back then, the problem was not the military witnesses because they were under the direct command and control of the military. So a number of those were shipped out to bases around the world, and they were all told in meetings. The most prominent way they kept them quiet, the military, is they herded them into these hangars, and they lined them all up, and they said, "Okay, guys, you think you heard something? You didn't hear anything. Nothing happened. There's been talk about a UFO. Nothing happened. And if you want to learn more about it, you can read all about it in Leavenworth." So there was the threat. If they continued to talk about it, even they'd wind up in Leavenworth. Well, I mean that would be enough to scare me off if I'm in the military, right? I don't want to spend.
I don't know. I guess women are just different, you know, and they just like find a closet to go gossip in, you know.
Well, yeah. Well, as far as the civilians are concerned, that was the real problem because there's no direct control over civilians except in time of war or martial law. Otherwise, civilians can tell military people to go jump if they start getting bossy, you know. So, and a few of them did. And so what the military did was they hired local civilians with authority. The sheriff of Chavez County, Sheriff Wilcox, they threatened the sheriff with his life and the life of his family if he didn't cooperate. They threatened the radio station owner, Walter Whitmore, who was going to broadcast an interview they had done with Mac Brazel, the rancher, who said he's found a flying saucer. So the FCC called Whitmore and said, you broadcast that interview, you'll lose your license. And just for good measure, a military person called from the Pentagon to say the same thing. So Walt Whitmore and Sheriff Wilcox rolled over, and they became pawns of the Air Force in helping to suppress the civilians who knew, mostly civilians who knew about the bodies. I mean, you can explain away wreckage as something, oh, that's from a new rocket or fighter plane we're developing, but you can't explain away 3.5-foot tall little beings with big heads. So those were the ones they zeroed in on, And those are the ones that Wilcox paid a visit to, and some of the military even paid a visit when Wilcox refused to tell a friend of his or two that he would kill them if they talked. So that's what they did. They said, if you talk, we're going to kill you, and we're going to kill your children.
And so in your investigating, have you found that there has been consistency to the type, the style, and maybe even the verbiage of the threats that unrelated people received?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
that you can sit there and go, they heard the same thing.
Yes. We are still finding civilians who were given the death threat. We're finding children of civilians who remember this, that their parents were scared to death because they had been paid a visit by the military or Sheriff Wilcox and told that they would not only kill them but the children as well. So that's why they remained quiet for so long. Also, the Air Force weather balloon story made national. When they changed they issued the weather balloon explanation. People tended to believe it because the military was held.
Our government doesn't lie to us.
Right, right. They were held in such high regard, but it was only in the late 70s where people started talking, and they've been talking ever since. And I will say this, Dr. Rita, they are not coming forward. We are finding them. It's not that they're coming out and say, hey, someone talk to me. We have to go get them. I mean, it's not that they are not coming forward, but we are finding them, and we have to convince them to talk to us. That doesn't always work, but enough of them have talked that we have pretty much got the framework of this case, and we're just now fleshing out the details.
And so what is it going to take to get the government to cough up the goods?
That's a good question. My own belief is that they will never do it because they have too much to answer for, and to somehow to officially admit we've been lying to you for 60 years. That's just not going to sit too well. Even suppose the Obama administration next week breaks the seal on the door to the Roswell wreckage and announces, "Yep, here it is." Well, somebody's going to have to pay a price for that. We don't know who, but somebody is, and no one in politics that we know has the courage to pay that price. So that's one reason. And the other main reason, I believe, is that in the Roswell case, they have too much to answer for in the way of they committed crimes against civilians. We even have stories of outings, as you call them, the disappearances. So there's just too much to answer for. And this one thing Frank Hoffman was right about is that their game plan is to run out the clock, and that means at some point there'll be no more first-hand witnesses alive. So that's where it's at.
Okay, so that's Roswell. We have a couple minutes. That's Roswell, but there was like Rendlesham. There has been other more recent crashes and stuff like that. So why can't they say, "Oh, well, this is our first one"? I mean, why keep that whole UFO thing under wraps at this point?
I think they're afraid of the domino effect. If you admit the first one, well, then people are going to ask about other ones. But
if they just don't cover it up and just say, and let the media do what it's going to do, and let whoever do what it's going to do, and not have the military get involved in the middle of it, and do the cover up, and just allow it to be, to happen.
You know what? I spent 4 years in the Air Force, and one thing to further your if you're a career military, the one way not to further your military career is to say, hey, General, how about that Roswell incident, huh? Wait. That is not going to enhance your career. That is not going to enhance your career. So that's the military mindset. And it's not going to happen. It has to be done by a civilian with the courage to do it. But here's the other thing, Dr. Rita, is there's no congressman or senator willing to take this on, because who wants to be known as, there goes Congressman UFO?
Jimmy Carter gets enough slack.
Yeah, well, if you recall, in the last primary, this is during the primary season, I guess it was 2008, Dennis Kucinich, he came forward and said he had a sighting, and it sounded like a real good sighting, but he paid a price for that. They gave him all kinds of flack after that, and I believe it cost him his chance to go further in the primaries.
Tom, there's music, which means we have to go. Thank you so much for coming on. Your book, great book, very factual. I would recommend it to anybody that was interested in Roswell.
Dr. Rita, it's been my pleasure. It went real fast.
And I'm going to have you back on. You are a plethora of information. But till then, the commercial break. We'll be
Just
back.
Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages. Hi, I'm James Alphayanchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio. Listen to Dr. Rita's Soul Healer Moment live each third Sunday night of the month on Feet to the Fire. www.feet2fire.com for more information.
You can get a copy of Dr. Rita's latest book, Avoiding the Cosmic 2x4, by visiting www.soulhealer.com. Get your copy today. How would you like to live long and enjoy great health? How about creating solid bones and whiter teeth, strengthen your heart and eyes, and have radiant, youthful-looking skin? There is an ancient health and longevity secret that has been used for millennia in Egypt, India, and China that can help you achieve this. For the first time in the modern world, Pearlsium brings ancient wellness secrets to you. For more information about Pearlsium, visit www.ancientpearl.com. Are you sensitive to energy? Want to explore the world beyond the five senses? Looking for a new career as an alternative healthcare practitioner? Then the Institute of Applied Energetics, Medical Intuition, and Energy Medicine training programs may be right for you. Our comprehensive curriculum provides students with a deep understanding of how to detect, evaluate, and transform the subtle body, as well as techniques for correcting energetic imbalances that may underscore a person's ability to experience radiant health. So if you are sensitive to energy, contact the Institute of Applied Energetics right away. Be a catalyst for changing the way healthcare is done around the world. Visit www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and start your new career today.